and call this special called Operations Committee meeting to order on Cinco de Mayo of 2021. The agenda for today's meeting is to continue the discussion on the 8% projects. So prior to doing that, let us, as we normally do, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Okay. The next order of business is to need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Mr. Smith, can you second that? Hearing none, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Mr. Smith, I don't believe, either can't hear us.
I think he stepped away.
Perhaps he stepped away. Thank you very much. All right, so any public comment, Robin?
No, ma'am.
All right, so let's just dive right into it. The discussion on the 8%. Mr. Odding, do you want to start us out?
Well, where we're going to begin is we're going to start where we left off at the last meeting. And if you will remember the last meeting, we had gone through all the projects above the black line that totaled to the $19,999,999. And we were going to discuss, we still have to discuss those between the black and the red lines. The thought, as we had mentioned before, was these projects between the black and the red lines are projects that could be funded with money that gets returned to contingency from projects that come in under their budget. That money could then go to these remaining projects between the black and the red line. So with that, just brief discussion, I'll hand it off. I believe
Nick's on the line.
Yep, Nick Sela is going to continue the conversations about the projects. Nick, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I just need to ask, which tab am I putting up? Which document are we working from?
This would be the green tab, the one that had a green table.
Option A
It's
priority.
tab 2, I believe.
I think it was option A in the material that I submitted to
Okay.
you.
Is it that one?
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
So if
Right.
you were to go down to, I believe might be the 3rd page is where the black line is.
Got it.
There it is. So everybody remembers we spoke all the way down to this right here, which is line 146. And now we're looking at line 14. So line 14, 16, and 26. These are all district level items that carry over multiple campuses. Furniture replacement, we had actually discussed this one a little bit in the previous meeting. And then flooring upgrades at multiple sites. And I believe Robert Auding can speak to this. I believe it is on a multi-year recurring schedule. Is that correct, Robert? Is this the one?
Well, on the furniture upgrade, let's start with the furniture upgrades. Yes,
Okay.
if you remember, we have been funding this at about $200,000 a year, which based on our furniture needs would be about a 100-year or 110-year replacement cycle. We need to be funding around $2 million a year, $2 million in furniture replacements a year to get on approximately a 15-year replacement cycle. Now, we don't expect to jump from $200,000 a year to $2 million a year, but we're just showing that as the amount that it would take to get to that 15-year replacement cycle. As money became available, we're just trying to show that we have lots of needs on the furniture level. We'd be quite happy if we were able to fund, say, $500,000 a year.
And I will add, just because we may have some new attendees that may not have heard the earlier conversations when we spoke about this. In the binder that has been distributed behind tab 4 is a summary sheet, And that's where Robert's getting the details from with regards to if we can get to the $2 million figure, we would be more in line with the replacement cycle plan that's close to 15 years.
No, we say building, based on building capacity at 1,100, what's the 1,100? $1,100. So is it $1,100 per student on furniture? Is that what you're saying, or per square foot?
No, I'm not, where do you see that?
On that appendix, page 166, it says school building capacity, that it has a dollar amount is based on building capacity times 1,100.
Yes. That's what it is.
What is it? Is it $1,100 per square foot?
Per student capacity. So if the capacity was 900, you would, it's just a nice way, it gives you a way of calculating the potential replacement.
Excuse me. I'm not sure who's speaking, but I can't hear what you're saying.
Oh, that's Ms. Carroll.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. We really, in this room, we're only being picked up by the microphone there, so we really got to either come closer. Thank you for letting us know, Mr. Smith. That was Ms. Crutchfield that was speaking.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So yes, what the furniture provider recommended was using that $1,100 per student capacity of the building. And that gives you a pretty good target for furniture replacement.
So you said about every year we've been putting about 200,000 toward it?
Yes, I mean, yes. In the last couple of years, we've been spending approximately, somewhere in the $200,000 to $300,000.
So this 2020, 2021 of 1.5 million is incorrect.
Where are you seeing that?
If you go to that, so it's a 2018, 2019 spending, 2019, 2020 spending, and I'm assuming this was like a prediction, 2020, 2021, and then to go down, it's just 1,560,000. So that's obviously not what we spent this year. That was maybe
Correct.
what we were hoping to spend this year.
These are more targets.
Correct, more targets, yes. If we were to get to that.
So this
was
was
the
the wish
20-year replacement.
No, that's more, that's the
If we gave
1.5,
an unlimited budget,
Yeah.
this is what we would spend.
right.
So we don't actually, what are we spending on furniture?
That's where, like last year, we spent a little over 200,000 on furniture.
Yeah.
Okay, because this says 123.
We spent at the top. That document.
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing.
No, that whole thing. we did.
You know that chart I was showing you yesterday that had where Louis
I was
has
trying to pull it up,
his
but
quarterly? So you can find a furniture tab on that for each of the past years, and that would show you how much we spent in past year expenditures on furniture.
yeah, I was thinking that way.
And we could put that together for you if you like on what we
You showed
spent.
me where to find it.
Yeah, I've got it. It's, just to make it.
In this chart, it does in the 4th and 5th columns, it gives you a recap for the 2018, 2019 calendar year where 228,000 and change was spent and which schools received it. And then once again, it added the 2019, 2020 spending that totaled 123,000.
And we,
Oh, there you
and then we'll find out on one of these charts what we're spending this year.
Not much.
go. Yes, you could, we
I'd say
have,
in that same range.
Yeah.
It really is. For replacement.
Thanks, sorry, to be complicated. I was just trying to figure out what the columns.
all right, I think we've done and then the flooring was multiple locations. One of the big flooring items I know is we have this building carpet needed. There is carpet needed in a lot of the office spaces of many of our elementary schools. Also includes items such as dance room floors and other things of that nature are what's listed in that flooring upgrades at multiple locations.
Yeah, can I ask one more question? On number 16, flooring upgrade, it says 2014 principal as the source, but it's a district level. So how does that work?
Probably where this originated was a 2014 request. from an item, and then we added on to it, I guess you would say, the other items as they came, as they were requested. That 2014 source, yeah, that's probably where the first request came from. It's in that conglomeration of requests.
But going forward, are you guys gonna use this model where you go basically budget for the district and then have the district distribute it?
What that does, in all honesty, is gives us flexibility to do as needs are come up. And if you have savings in one, you may be able to add others. So that's where something like that, where if we get individual ones, such as say Okatee needs 20,000 for one item and Port Royal gets 15,000 another item, it just gets harder to manage in that. So that's the reason why it's set up.
The only thing is it's harder for the board person to look at standardization and policy and all that if it's the district sort of just giving a pot, no worries.
Yes, I think what we need to do is list what comes to that number on this sheet where we broke it out, and I thought we had actually, and so that's.
You're looking at page 32, Robert?
Yeah, that's
what I've got opened up as well.
That's where I was thinking it was. So that, in future, this is where we'd like to show how that number was calculated, is to show it on the sheet.
Yeah, I think the mentality strategists would like to see that, that we're actually going.
And that's exactly what these, additional scope detail sheets will provide going forward. Each year we'll continue to polish the diamond and make it better tool to, meet the needs and answer these type of questions that we're getting on feedback in this round.
Really, it's that spread. We had that spreadsheet that had where that information came from. I didn't have that. So, yes, we need to list those items.
Well, because I wonder too, like tennis resurfacing, right? Like we know we're going to do all the schools that have tennis courts. So would it be better to do it broken out like we have now? Or to say we're going to have a district level tennis resurfacing budget?
Well, tennis resurfacing we do on a recurring schedule.
Right.
I believe it's 7 years.
I think so, right. Yeah.
Is that 7 years?
I think it was 7.
So every court gets redone in 7 years. So there's a dedicated court for that resurfacing. So the Hilton High School, if it gets resurfaced this year, 7 years from now, it would get it again. So it's a specific court that gets it every 7 years.
But wouldn't it help with in terms of if you had savings in one, shifting it to another type of thing?
Well, we only have 6 high schools, so typically don't have multiple ones.
And one elementary school and some middle school.
Yeah, we do have, we have Hilton Head Middle and Port Royal.
I'm just saying like, or Pete, or whatever else we have that, we kind of, some things we seem to break down by school, and some things maybe we're leaning towards more of a district level kind of model.
That, in my mind, is up to how much specific information you want. To me, it's always easier to conglomerate. It's how comfortable you are with how much we're lumping together and how much of it you want us to break apart into specific items.
Is there an advantage budgeting wise to lump?
Well, budgeting wise, they're going to require us in the end to break it out by school because they track everything we spend on a school level. So even if it's conglomerated like flooring, when you'll see a number like this for flooring, but when you look at Louis sheets, it'll be broken every time we spend, it will be broken out by specific school.
Right.
They track, finance tracks everything at the school level.
We'll use the 2-digit unique school code with that budget so that it will be able to be tracked. It says, oh, it came out of the Beaufort funds district-wide for that purpose, but it went to this school. So those tracking sheets accomplish that granularity.
So maybe something to talk about with finance and operations to see how we have an opinion on that.
Yeah. I think there's a good meld between the two. Certain things have to, so. Okay. So I like the idea of adding, like we talked before, just taking these detail sheets and adding more detail onto it. And then the other part of it would be the conversation.
And just for clarity purposes for myself and my team, those conversations that we're having are for the next year's, or correct? Or do you need them into this binder for this year? I just asked so that we know exactly what you're asking for.
You did update some of these, right?
We did put in some extra photos back there, and I know that on 1 or 2 of the occasions that we've met so far, we've sort of done them one at a time and said, oh, that could be an example for next year.
Right.
I just want to know, do you want that granularity now, or that's one of the examples that we could do for next year?
That's a good question. I would be fine with having it for next year. We're improving the process for, every year. Ingrid, do you feel differently?
The only thing is if you're spending it, you'll tell us where you're spending it. That's-
Oh, yeah, those detailed reports are available.
Well, but,
Right. So I see it more as for next year.
Good. Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else about that, Robert?
Nick, back to you. Be on item 26.
All right. 26, this is the last district level item. Vehicles and forklifts. Appendix B, I believe it is, does show our current inventory of vehicles at the district level. There were 4 that were identified to need to be replaced. I don't believe it is the most critical of a need right now. That's why it is below the black line. However, we do know it's important at the same time. So it is 4 vehicles and then the addition of a forklift. Any questions on that?
I don't see any hands up.
All right. Next item, line 30, H.E. McCracken Middle School. The windows need to be resealed. It's really not just an upgrade. It's also resealing the windows. This does not seem to be critical at the moment. It's not as though we have a major leak or anything that's really affecting the learning environment. It just is important to revisit this every once in a while for energy purposes and your utilities.
So it's really a resealing,
Yes.
just a resealing.
Now, line 52, Hilton Head Island SCA. This is actually window replacement. I believe there's approximately 12 windows that need to be replaced. Again, it's actually for more of the functioning purposes of the windows. I don't think it is a critical item. It's not leaking or anything like that.
It's more cosmetic.
I do believe so. Yes, this was a request. I believe it was 2018 by the principal. I don't think we had the project manager visit this site. I think he found that it just was not a critical item and we just put it below the line. Should be addressed, just there is more important items right now.
Okay.
We have 2 more items at Hilton Head Island SCA. The showcase glass and drinking fountains. The showcase glass, I believe there is some scratching on the glass. It is not as though it is actually broken and a liability. And the replacing the drinking fountains, this is for putting in the fountains that actually allow you to fill up a water bottle. It's more of an upgrade to the water fountains as opposed to replacing them because they're broken.
Okay.
Question on any of those?
Any questions? No, sir, I don't think so.
All right. 71 and 72, James J. Davis, ECT. Bus parking area and the parking lot improvements. There's repaving that needs to take place in the bus parking area and the parking lot needs restriping. There's also a little bit of sloping that resloping and regrading that needs to be done. We do have some ponding water. I think we've all experienced it in the past. It can be frustrating, but at the same time, it's not of a critical nature. It just needs to be improved. It's a decent amount of work. I believe it's in the neighborhood of 15,000 square feet of space. So that does have a cost to it.
Where's that at?
That is James J. Davis. Are you looking for it on the sheet?
Yes, I am. What sheet is it?
It will be the green tab, the green tables. It is line 71. I believe the page number. Can you scroll down for me on the screen? I actually don't have it.
Page 12.
12. So it should be roughly in the middle of the page.
And Mr. Smith, if you'd like to see some additional details, if you've got your full binder, you could go to page 87. 87 has some photos of that work area as well.
You said page 87?
87, that would be your detail sheet, yes.
So on the page 87 that I see right now, it is, okay, wait.
So the digital version, are you on a digital version or a paper version?
I'm on the paper version right now.
All right, at the bottom, page 87 is the one he's
And
referencing.
would it be tab 4, 5, 3, 2? It's broken down in tabs.
Tab 3.
Tab 3, okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions about it, Mr. Smith?
Actually, I'm fine. I'm looking for 80. I'm looking for 87, page 87 right now. If you bear with me,
That's fine.
Okay.
thank you. See, in my book, I have page 85, and it goes to 80. Okay, got it. Oh, yeah, y'all see these holes in the parking lot, in the bus parking lot?
Yes.
I believe the project manager said that that was the one
Yeah.
spot, and that's why he took a picture of that one. That is the one troubled spot most of all. Otherwise, there's some general ponding.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think the other thing that you'll see by making this site visit is more representative of that picture that's in the upper right-hand corner that shows some of the alligator type of splitting of that top surface. It's not, a serious degradation of the paving, and that's, I think, why we put it out as a pullout right now. But we do want to make sure that it stays in the record so that we continue to monitor that, because in the years ahead, that definitely needs to be addressed. But I think at this point in time, it's okay to pull that out and postpone that for the time being.
Okay. Okay to move on, Mr. Smith?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
And just by the way, this is some good information. I do appreciate the book because it's very understanding. I do appreciate that. Visual is very important.
That's good. Thank you. Well, let's moving on. Robert, would you like to talk about the water tank and the fencing? I believe we discussed this last time.
Yes, I would, just because I would, if you remember, I believe it was you, Ms. Fidrich, that asked if it was secured, and I did have maintenance go out there and verify that and make sure it was locked and it is secured.
Okay.
So this is an old water system that's no longer in use. As you can see, it's rusted and for the most part an eyesore and potential hazard, although we have secured it off so that no one could get in that area. And this cost is to demolish this area, to get rid of all this equipment and have it removed from the area, so it will no longer be a hazard.
I have a little bit of a hard time on us pushing this one just because it's a safety. Are there any other safety things that we've pushed? Because I'm like, as a mom, if you know it's a hazard, it becomes harder to ignore, right? If you know this.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it is an item that could be easily funded once money is available. So it's something that I would think we would get the opportunity to take care of. Or I'm very much hoping that we get the opportunity to take care of.
Just if something happens, we need to have this conversation besides skip it. It would make it a lot worse.
So that's,
It has been there for several years.
I know, but then once you talk about it, right, you say, oh, well, this is a hazard, but we don't need to deal with
Yes,
it. And then
it is
something-
security.
Yeah, and I think the key there, Robert, is that though it may have been flagged as a safety concern, by securing it, you've addressed the main prime concern there. Is it an attractive nuisance? Kids will be kids.
Yeah.
But by securing those gates and fences, that's where you're protection comes in, and like Robert said, we're not talking a lot of money here, so if we can get, on the same sheet with the flexibility of savings when they are recognized from above the bold line. This is a prime example where when we have $15,000 come back in, we can go down this list and go, oh, we can knock this one out right here. Let's get rid of that right now.
There's just not much of the safety and security that we've taken off the above the black line.
No,
So I think that's
that was purposeful.
Yeah.
You know, we always try to pay attention to safety and security.
No, I would say also, let's mark this, maybe when we find an opportunity to move back above the wall.
Mhm. And so that brings up a process question. Exactly how does this, or have you in the past worked it when there is an item that's like, okay, this needs to be brought into the area that we will spend and take another one out? How do you exactly are seeking our input in that regard?
So step one was to finish going through these.
That's what I thought. I thought so. And then we're gonna go back and visit it?
Yes, yes,
Awesome.
yes.
I just
So
wanted to
we
make
have a
sure.
couple different ways we're gonna report this, and
Okay.
then we're gonna get to the, let's take this one off.
Right.
So
Okay.
we're not quite there
A
yet.
little bit of a shuffle.
Right,
That's why
right.
I'm saying-
I
That's why I'm
just,
saying, let's mark this one
Yes.
as one that you may want to move back
Yes.
above.
let's definitely do that. Yeah, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to
That will
find
come.
that. And I didn't want just the fact that we're going through these without too much comment to suggest agreement.
Right.
So, okay.
Yep, nope, yeah, I'm expecting some movement.
Okay,
All right.
all right, thank you.
We all got too excited about
Line
this.
up the end, Nick. You'd be so kind.
Brace yourself.
Mr. Smith's hands up.
Okay, yes, Mr. Smith, thank you.
Oh, I have a question. And you kind of hit on some of it. My question is also, so basically we're doing an overview look of the possibility next summer projects, 8% projects, correct?
Yes.
Yes,
And I know St. Helena Elementary School has a leak in the hallway, and I think it's the main entrance. In a couple other places, I saw some leaks in some classrooms, and I was wondering, were we not going to get those, because would those not be important 8% projects?
I think we covered that one already, but let me make sure.
I can't really hear you. Maybe they may need another room, a mic in that room, because it's very, very hard to hear.
So, okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking we had that one covered, but we actually have the roof at St. Helena ECC. You'll notice is line 131. So the St. Helena Elementary School roof at this time is not recommended to be replaced.
So has there been,
Maintenance thing.
Yeah, that sounds like a maintenance thing, and I'll definitely have that looked into.
Okay.
here.
that's,
The roof leaking is maintenance?
Yes, sir. So what we do is we have a roofing consultant that goes out and reviews buildings and makes recommendations on which buildings are of highest priority to be replaced. The roof at St. Helena Elementary School, I can look, I'll go see how old it is, but I believe it's 10 years old or somewhere in the 10 years old range. So a roof that's say 10 years old is not ready for replacement, but it may have some repairs that are needed, and that would be a maintenance item.
Okay, well, that does brings me a lot of concerns. And then when I look on here as well, I see a lot of stuff laid out middle school, but I don't see. I see it in the underlying list, but I don't see it in the actual list.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith, did you say that again?
Oh, I apologize. I said I see a lot of stuff for laid out middle school in the actual printout, but I don't see it above the red line. So that was a kind of and I believe the stuff above the red line is what we were kind of what they were kind of moving towards being important.
Right, so when we had our meeting last week, we went through each one of these starting on the first page, item by item, and got an explanation about each one of these. And so now we're finishing going through each item, and then we're going to go back and discuss priorities and so on. So if you would be okay with us finishing that process that we started last week, we'll finish
Yes,
the
ma'am.
process, and then we'll go back and look at individual.
Okay, I got you. Okay, yes, ma'am. I have no
Okay.
problem with that. Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we finished talking about line 72, the demolish the water tank, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're on to 78.
Yes, ma'am. Line 78, Lady Island Middle School. This was a request for additional bleachers for the football and track. It's just 3-row portable bleachers. And we're looking for 6 sets of those. They're not there right now.
Okay, what do they have there right now? I mean, Ladies Island Middle's, their athletic setup is not optimum, but
They do have a football field that's in good shape.
Okay.
They do have some portable bleachers. There's a request for more.
yeah,
I only think they have 1 or 2 sets that are out there now.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Line 99, the maintenance building warehouse. Renovation of the transportation office. This is an office section that is roughly 40 feet by 20 feet. And we're looking for floor paint, electrical, doors, and cameras.
Okay, so this is a different building than the one we discussed last week. Where is this building?
This building is at MC Riley.
Let me see, right.
Yeah, it's half maintenance and half transportation.
Okay.
So actually the description here probably needs to be redone. We call that South Side Annex building, but it's not a warehouse building. Call it maintenance transportation building.
Maybe change that description, Nick, from maintenance building / warehouse to maintenance building / transportation.
Yes, I think that would be a better
Yeah, I think they call it maintenance.
designation.
Sure.
Any questions?
Definitely.
Mr. Smith, you have a question?
Not really. I just want to know how important was it for them to get those bleachers?
At Ladies Island Middle?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a request that the school has made. I personally wouldn't want to give it an important, it is not a life safety or asset protection item. It is a request for additional features at the football field.
Thank you.
Unclassified.
Yes.
Kind of bug you engineer test. Okay, Port Royal Elementary School.
All right, so 113 and 114, both Port Royal, resurfacing the tennis courts and the lighting sensors. Definitely did not feel that the lighting sensors themselves were a critical item. It is useful for the functioning. However, it's not something that is an immediate need. Resurfacing this tennis courts. Robert, can you speak to where this fits on the schedule? Because I didn't think this was actually on the schedule for this year. I can't remember.
Well, this is the one we talked about last time. I think that
Single one.
yeah, it's a shared use with us in the town of Port Royal. And part of our agreement was we resurface the tennis courts. They keep the lights. It'd be used for classes for like a PE class for the kids. If you're familiar with Port Royal, they don't have a lot of outdoor spaces. So the tennis courts is one of their limited outdoor spaces outside of their playground. So tennis courts are not standard at elementary schools. This is our only, I think I can say this is our only elementary school with the tennis court.
Right. Did we skip number 99?
No, that was the South Side Annex.
That's the maintenance annex / transportation.
Did you have a question on that one?
Is this the building next to at the district office?
No, as I said, this is the building next to MC Riley. It used to be the old Bluffton Fire Station.
Yes, sir.
So half the building is maintenance, half the building is transportation. This is an area of the building that we repaired the roof. It had a leak. It's just the old offices of the fire station. And it needs some love to bring it up to an acceptable or a modern office environment.
Ooh, a lot of money. All right, yes, sir.
Any other questions with 113 or 114?
Riverview.
Go ahead, Nick, go to 126, please.
Actually, Robert, I would ask that you speak. The rekeying, you have a better understanding of that than I do.
So we've updated all of our keys throughout the district. Riverview is one of the places we have it, and it has a couple different keying systems. So they have requested us to upgrade their key so there'd be one key that would work. I mean, on one keying system for their entire building, and it would also bring it up to our district standard as far as the keys go. So obviously, it's something they'd like to have, but it's not a necessity.
Are we doing that somewhere else? Why does that ring a bell?
Yeah, we were
We
talking,
had door and hardware somewhere.
but you're talking about it only
St.
had one.
Helena.
Yes, the ECC. So that's a building as well that, both of those buildings, we don't have complete control of. So those are two buildings that had not been upgraded.
Like what
to both, it's kind of similar situation for both of those.
Can you tell me what actually on 135, is that what we're talking about?
No, right now we're at 126 Riverview Charter School.
Oh, okay.
When I just referenced St. Helena, I was referencing a project that's actually on the previous page, I believe. It is another rekeying.
Okay, thank you.
And that is our responsibility compared to Riverview's responsibility.
Correct, because we're the building owner.
Yeah.
So that's part of one of the building systems.
Mhm.
Riverview does have a board 2-3 years ago, Redney, gave Riverview $4 million in capital funds that they could use for their facilities to upgrade them as they saw necessary. So this would be an item that we would charge to their capital fund kind of budget that they've been given from the board.
Because we've been keeping them running total against that 4 million over the course of the last few years. Whenever a project has been requested, we write an amendment and we keep them running total so that we know exactly out of that 4 million what has been spent to date.
So if we already have a different source of funding, why is it on the 8% list?
It's still funded by 8%. So even though the board has said, all right, Riverview has $4 million, that $4 million has to come from our 8%.
Got it.
And that's one of the things that, okay, you got it.
I do. Yeah, I for some reason was thinking.
There's not another pot of money.
Yeah, that there's another pot that they're just dwindling down and it's earning great interest on it.
If there was another pot, that would be off of this list
Exactly.
and onto that one.
Okay, but that's the first I'd heard about this 4 million promise.
Yep.
And it was the board did that a couple of years ago?
It's probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay,
But over the course of 20 years, they
Yes.
still pay that.
Right. So we did an estimate on what their maintenance requirements would be over 20 years and it came to $4 million to the board. That's what the board promised.
interesting. Okay,
But anytime we spend that money, we get their authorization. We charge against that,
Got it.
or we keep it track.
okay. Okay, next one, please.
All right. So we're on 132 and 135 St. Helena Elementary School. The parking lot improvements and the entry drive modifications. There was actually 2 items. The initial request I had received was actually just for a speed bump, a single speed bump that was missing. It was actually found to be more extensive. A lot of repaving that needs to take place. The drive just needs repaving. That's why it is a more substantial cost than a single speed bump. And we feel that it is not absolutely critical at this time, though. Is there a question on that before I go to the next one?
Yes, where is that speed bump located? Is that in the St. Helena parking lot?
I believe so. It's actually, we have a photo of it. The project manager was able to identify that. It is on page 148 out of 167. But at the same time, we found that that was not the only critical item, even though obviously I just stated that the criticality wasn't high.
Mr. Ali, can you tell me what tab is that on?
Again, your tab 3, page 148. What they just have is a picture of one of
A missing speed
Of a
bump.
speed bump.
that's missing. You know,
Next to a missing speed bump, it's like compare and contrast.
what I would say about this, the driveway redo at both St. Helena Elementary and the ECC were one of the referendum projects. There was one of the items was a whole redo of parking lots and drives. And so I think that would appear again possibly as an option for a future referendum. And at St. Helena, both the ECC and the elementary school, one of the biggest improvements we can do to that school is redoing the drives. So I look forward to the day when we can redo it. It'll make it a big improvement to how that school functions and looks.
So would you say that that's more critical than the James J. Davis bus parking area and parking lot improvements?
I don't know if I'd say more critical.
Okay.
They're the same.
I think it falls into the category of very similar.
Yeah.
It's one of those assets that, you know, it hasn't degraded to the point where the useful life needs to be addressed. You still have some longevity that's still capable from that asset, but it needs to be addressed in the years to come. So that's why I think you're seeing it on the list as a pull out, which means we can postpone that for a little bit longer, but continue to monitor.
How does it improve the function of an elementary school to have a paved drive?
So the stacking, I'm thinking in particular, the ECC, if you've ever been in the ECC, they don't have enough parking. The drop-off line isn't long enough. It's just not laid out.
So you would just read.
And the buses as well are kind of in the middle between, and right, if you've ever been there, people park everywhere because there's not enough parking. They park in the grass, they park all over the place. And I think personally, you make a big improvement to that school to give it a better layout at the front. And
So
more parking.
redesign the whole thing.
Yeah, though it needs to be redone.
And can you do that for 500,000? Does that include redesign or just repaint?
You could make a big dent in it for $500,000.
Just kind of just a number that was.
Yeah, I think so. That's a rough, that's a
Because there's no
rough magnitude.
We could do that, yeah.
Well, I know that when we have our project managers go out in the field, we always ask them, hey, give us a general approximate area so that when Nick sat down with our cost estimators, they could arrive at a rough order of cost magnitude. And when we're dealing with rough order cost magnitudes, I always prefer to have a figure that's more in line with what you see there.
Yeah.
I always sometimes go, you know, can we really have a rough order cost magnitude if we're taking it out to $485
Right,
as the
right.
end of it? But that $500,000, like Robert said, it'll put a good dent into it, but a lot of it, you know, would need to be studied a little further to determine, are we going to increase the queuing and staging
Yeah.
areas? Because if you start to make a lot of those changes, it does have cost. with it.
Sure. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Smith?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. The next item still at St. Helena is replacement of casework in the classrooms. There is, it's actually pretty much all of the classrooms. I believe it's 43 is the count of the classrooms. We found that it's not, there's no issue with replacing it due to things being broken. It's more upgrades and enhancements. So it dropped below the black line. However, because of the capacity, 43 classrooms, it's a much bigger dollar amount than we had originally anticipated based on the request, but it is also an older request, so that's why it's still above the red line.
So none of this falls under furniture, cabinets and things like that. That's totally
Because this is permanent.
This is built in,
built in.
yeah.
Okay, so, and, do we know how this compares to other elementary schools? Is
I
this
think you
the
would
look?
say St. Helena, Elementary School, MC Riley Elementary School, J.J. Davis, they're all actually the same school, same generation,
Okay,
probably about the same conditions. They're all.
Similar vintages.
Yeah, they all could
It
use
is
it.
very vintage,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I think if we keep dropping this down, then we'll eventually come back and vote these cabinets and they'll be,
Yeah.
it'll be retro. And we'll just go with it.
I'm in another school that I can tell you, we're renovating Hilton Head Middle School. They're terrible there too. That's one of that'll make a huge improvement just getting out all the casework.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I was gonna suggest is, often when we deal with renovations, especially those that deal with casework, when we go in and we do more of a renovation of the space itself, so that when we remove the casework, we're not surprised with, oh, they didn't extend the VCT underneath of it. Let's get the flooring replaced with the casework in the budget. Let's get, painting of the walls, new ceilings, some lights. That refresh makes such a change in that learning environment.
Oh, yeah.
That to couple that with the other scopes that I just mentioned makes a lot of sense and may align well for a referendum type of scope.
And a lot of those have, those classrooms have the saints and all of
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
So, you're talking 30, 40-year-old closets.
They look very 80s, that paint.
Yeah.
You can look at the
So-
pictures and think, yeah, that's probably the vintage.
Melanie Griffin's shoulder pads. pink
Yes.
pads.
So the closets are probably, most of them are probably the same.
But they probably have good water pressure. People might pay money for them.
You're right. Okay, move on. Next, 139, please.
Yeah, so last two items, Whale Branch Early College High School, installation of sound panels in the band and chorus rooms. We did confirm both of them are requested. And then the additional parking spaces, we confirmed with the principal that is also a need. However, neither one we view as critical at the moment for the functioning.
To pause here for a moment. So Whale Branch was built when? 11 years ago?
2010.
And how many students did it have?
I would say they started out with over 500.
Okay, and now they're down to 400. They're probably in the same range.
450.
Yeah.
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 Never
Did we
dropped.
not build enough parking 10 years ago that we now need to spend another $250,000?
I tell you what, the problem at Will Branch is when we have events. And now that we added the auditorium and the second gym that holds 1,500 people, there's not enough parking there to house 1,500 people.
Who's coming to the 1,500? It's a 400 person school. Like, are we renting it out to the community type of thing, or are they
No.
having?
That's what we built. They can fill it up. That it is a community. It is a community center as a school. The community comes out to events at that school.
They certainly support everything that happens at that school.
So it's the community, but they're coming for school related events.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
And so if you have a big event there, people park in the parking lots, they park all along the drives, they park all the way down the roads on either side. So really, the additional parking is not needed for the functions of the school as on a day-to-day basis. It's needed for special events such as athletic activities or auditorium activities or any kind of big events they have.
And then didn't we lose someone? We built the VTAC and the gym.
We
Not
did,
a lot, but
that
we
is
did
true.
lose some.
We did, when we built the auditorium, we took away some parking.
You know, I haven't been out to like Beaufort High and whatnot, but I know like other high schools have the same problem. There's a football
Oh,
game when
Yeah,
there's
Hilton Head High School has massive park. They don't have any space anymore to add any more parking, for one thing.
It's just, yeah, because it goes under standardization and equity, so I'm just confused about the categorization. Because it sounds like all the high schools have the same problem.
That is a true statement.
Just wondering.
Some have fields and parking and others don't.
Yeah.
It's all wetlands pretty much.
Okay, so are we going to continue below the red line, or are we just going to now go back and hash over a few things?
We were gonna, because really everything below the red line is just being pushed off to other days,
Yeah.
other years. So unless there's anything y'all would like to discuss to bring up, we were not gonna go through those projects.
Can you tell me what ADC stands for?
ADC,
Yeah, it's under source.
so that used to be our roofing consultant. So ADC did an overall roofing assessment of all of our roofs back in 2011.
Because the only thing is, two of these under the red line are ADC, which means they recommended a new roof 10 years ago.
Yes.
That's one of my questions.
Okay.
Well, I thought it may not have been 10 years ago. That report in 10 years ago may have recommended it 5 years ago, and it's gotten pushed every year after that. I
It
don't
just says
know.
ADC 2011.
Yes, that's when that report was done. It may not have
Oh,
said it
I get
needed it in 2000. It may have said it needed it in 2016, and we pushed it off.
Okay.
since then.
Right,
So-
and I will share that the district's current roof consultant, he was contacted and given the opportunity to review this information and to help the team prioritize the highest needs in the district when it comes to the roof replacements. So that's what brought those other ones up higher.
Okay.
These ones stayed down in here, and like I said, he was given the opportunity to review that. I believe he strongly believes that there's still useful life that can be obtained from that roof that's there now.
Rob, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Molly just reminded me that for our people joining us online, we have to make sure we only speak one at a time. Oh, sorry. Just sometimes it's difficult to understand. I did have a question on the remove, the grayed out area where these items were removed, and it's line 64. And so I was just a little confused. It says that Hilton Head Island School for Creative Arts is on the 4-year plan to paint the corridors. And so I'm just wondering why we're doing Port Royal, why that's required. And then Hilton Head for Creative Arts is on a 4-year plan and it's a remove. So I'm trying to understand the difference.
You want to answer that one, Nick? Or should I?
It was painted a year ago.
Oh,
I think
That's
So
right.
I think what happened is that we often will categorize painting as either just the corridors or the entire interior. And I believe a year ago, the entire interior was painted. And that's why this one just needs to come off. It was inadvertently listed.
got
We
it.
identified it and flushed it out and put it down into the gray area.
Okay.
That is correct. So the one advantage to what we've done here, anything that's in gray, that was confirmed with principals and staff. If it's in gray, it is not our judgment or our recommendation. It is what was confirmed by district staff.
Thank you very much. I was just confused why it'd be required for one, and so thank you.
Yeah, these
Great,
are-
that's good.
These are the type of questions we like, yeah.
Yeah.
also on 45 and 46, HVAC for, was identified in 2011 for Hilton Head High School. Did those get done? Are they being taken off because we're potentially redoing some remodeling? That's a 10-year.
They are actually being completed, a part of the referendum work this summer.
Good.
There was some overlap and they did actually get included.
So they're getting new HVAC this summer.
Yes, that is what is scheduled right now. I can check the schedule.
But it was included in the referendum.
Not referendum, 8%.
8% of the summer.
The existing 8%. Yes, I think I
Also,
misspoke
they
there.
get to move forward a year from on this list.
It's already, yes, it's already, it was counted twice. It's already been done as part of a different item in the past.
Awesome.
And it's being done this month. All right,
Those were my
so are we ready to move on?
I think so.
So what I would like to do is just real quick, show you what we have for option 1. And then Reggie is going to talk about some of the rate raise finance is going to help us. And then we're going to talk about option 2.
Okay.
So option 1.
I think we called it option A.
So option A.
Okay.
And I believe that's what Robin has up. There's only a couple little minor things on here, and the one is the building needs assessment you'll find on the first page, which is page 10. You had asked us to look at how we could reduce that. If you remember, we talked about removing the buildings that were fairly new or that were having major renovation work done as part of this referendum. So that included May River, River Ridge, Battery Creek High School, Hilton Head Middle, Hilton Head High School. And in all, it took off almost 1 million square feet of area needing assessment. So that removed $236,000. And so that is what we're showing here. And the changes are highlighted. So that's the first change. The second change, that some of that, or some of the money that was savings, we actually increased the money in the district office HVAC system. I'll tell you, this came because after we had our meeting and looked at this, some of my staff came up to me and they said, they were reviewing this and they were like, well, did you include in the district office HVAC system all 3 systems we needed? And we realized no, so that number was actually lower than we needed. So we have actually increased that amount from last year. It is now for 3 systems within this building, which if you remember last time we talked about, that is the superintendent and HR area is 1 system. System 2 is in the over in the ISG and what used to be support services, where now communications is located, and the 3rd system is in finance, and all 3 of those systems at this time need to be.
So the money you pulled out of the
Some
building
of that.
assessment sort of matches right up with the money you added to the HVAC.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So we didn't make a lot of progress.
We did not make any progress there in the total amount. Well, we're trying to spend the $20 million. So those are the changes in option 1. So with that, if you did notice in your packet, we had a memo from Tanya Crosby, and Tanya was not able to join us today, so we have invited Mr. Reggie Murphy to discuss this memo. So I will turn the floor over to Reggie.
Okay, thank you, Art. In response to your request, Tanya prepared this memo, and in the memo, she identified 4 potential areas of funding that'll maybe enhance our 8% projects and initiatives. The first one is rollover of unused 8% funds. A couple of years ago, the board voted or approved rolling forward unused 8% funds and using those in that current bond issue for that year. So to be proactive, Tanya has decided to close another couple of funds, the 2016, 2017 projects, which would generate about $493,000. And all those funds are basically interest income on investments and bond premiums. All the funds for projects were spent. The second, and she would roll those forward to the 2023 8% project form. The second area is E-rate reimbursements. We've accumulated almost $2 million of E-rate fund reimbursements as of the end of last month. And these are reimbursements for technology projects that were paid for with 8% funds. She's offering up 1.6 million of that 2 million. She needs to retain some of those funds to pay the salary and benefits for our E-rate specialists and for our E-rate contractor funds for learning. And those funds would be used for funding 2023 8% IT projects. She gave a little insight as to next year. We expect to receive $2.8 million in refunds, reimbursements. Those may be here by the end of this fiscal year. And so those funds will be used for 2024 8% IT projects. The third area was for the facilities needs assessment. At the time she wrote the memo, she thought we needed $875,000. I think that's been revised to $639,000. Again, the source of funding for that would be the proceeds from the sale of the Burroughs Avenue facility, which we sold last year. That sale generated $1,275,000, so that the funds have not been designated for any purpose at this point, so the board can always authorize the use of those funds for the needs assessment. And then the fourth area are Sr2 funds. We ran into a mold remediation problem at Well Branch Elementary and the middle school when we started the HVAC projects. So we have found that about $772,000 are eligible for reimbursement through Sr2 funds. We've applied for those. We're expecting approval anytime. And once received, those would be allocated to the 8% fund as well. So in summary, we're looking at about $3,504,980 once you change the assessment to $639,000, which will be available for your 8% work.
All right.
That's a surprise.
Good news, huh?
Yeah, it absolutely is good.
So it was 639 to 875 from the, what changed to 639?
The cost of the facility needs assessment.
He's just
Oh,
saying
okay, I thought you
from
I
our,
see.
from our last option to the option one where you just showed you.
Gotcha.
What
Reggie,
page is that?
this is the additional,
It's in the board docs.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's new.
so where else can these funds be used? Can they can't be used at all, transferred it to any operating expenses, right?
Well, typically you wouldn't use one-time funds for recurring expenses. So,
Right.
And then normally you wouldn't use those for operating expenses.
So can these funds then be used for purchasing land?
They could, yeah.
So on the facilities need assessment, sale generated 1.275, and then it says one-time use. If we use the 875, what happens to the $300,000 or $400,000 that we don't use?
It just remains in the capital projects account until you decide to use it.
Okay, so it's not like we lose it and then, okay. I was like, get hung up on the word one-time use.
No.
Like I can find a $1.275 million here. Awesome. So we have, now the E-rate funding, this was what was hanging me up. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Smith? Because we talked about this last time. They've got
Yes,
$5
I'm
million.
listening to you.
Okay, good. So they've got the $5 million in our current 8%, but we anticipate getting 2.8 million back. Yeah, I mean, I know that's not guaranteed, but that's kind of our best guess at this point.
It is. We have Mike Brandell on the call. If you want to address your E-rate questions to him, he is our E-rate specialist.
Well, more it's like how we use that money, because what I don't want to do is take $5 million out of a $20 million budget and then make sure that when that money comes back, that it goes back in and we raise the next year's budget to 22.8.
You're right. We'd have to designate for that purpose.
So, and it'd have to raise the budget. So can the board do that? Because we've got this $20 million cap, right? How does that work?
The board can change that.
But do we have to change it, or that's what I'm asking? Because
Well, what I would say is that $20 million cap, that is what the board has kind of set as a goal. I mean, is what you'd like to spend. And that's what bond council has put into your financial.
Okay.
There's no reason you can go up or down. You could make it 25 or you could make it 5. But in your financial plan, I'd say, jump in here, that is what they put into your plan. So in your millage rates and everything else, they're planning on you spending $20 million every year for the next.
But every reimbursement we get from E-rate should raise the cap on that $20 million cap by that amount, right?
Well, if you designate the use of that reimbursement, it's not automatically assigned to the 8% project. It's just held in a
But
fund.
it's paid out of the 8% project.
It is
So if it's a reimbursement, I feel like it should naturally come back and raise, because if we don't raise the cap, you know what I mean, then we're just shifting money around.
You're right, but it has to go into a fund when we receive it, and then the board has to decide how they can use those funds.
So we would need to do some sort of board policy thing if we wanted to make that automatic.
You would.
Yeah, take it. Before you got here, we were having a little conversation, about that 20 million. And this is something we can discuss with finance, but Reggie, would you kind of repeat what we had talked a little bit about, that number was set probably a decade ago?
It was before you got here. It was more than 10 years ago that we set the $20 million threshold. And as we discussed, it was probably an affordability issue at the time, because we thought that was all we could do. We had deferred maintenance, and it had been put off for years, and we were just trying to come up with a plan that would address that. But if you look at $20 million 10 or 11 years ago, and you assume an inflation factor of 3%, which is normal for construction projects, you're looking at about $28 million was what the number should be this year, as opposed to what it was 10 or 11 years ago.
Plus we're adding schools.
Plus we're adding schools, yeah, and the schools are getting older.
Right.
So you haven't kept up with inflation with that $20 million number. So that was what the point I was trying to make.
Cause that's good to know for our budget discussions, because you're saying it's all built into our millage, just 20 million.
Well, it's built into your debt program.
Right.
So they project 20 million a year, and you can see from the debt program how your 8% funds will accumulate. Obviously, they accumulate faster if you only do 20 versus 25 or 30.
Yeah, because I don't see how we could possibly keep going at 20 million, especially if we're doing technology out of this and all these assessments. And I looked back, there's some other like soft costs, but if you took it like the actual money we're spending on schools, and I carve out the district office too, just like student stuff, it's like $12 million, and for 32 schools.
But
It's not enough.
it's definitely not enough.
So what's the barrier to doing that from a finance standpoint? Are we going to have to issue a TAN? This is my first.
No, what we would do is ask our financial advisor to revise the debt council and show us what we could, what the borrowing would do to our accumulation of 8%. Because I know a goal of the board is to accumulate the 8% funds so that you would have a sizable amount in there should there be an emergency or some sort. But you would just have to revise the debt council.
And actually, this whole conversation goes into our joint meeting with finance.
Right.
Because one of the things I want to advocating for is just making sure we can spend the 20 million.
20 million.
Because,
Okay.
so,
Hold off maybe on any other questions about this until next week.
well, you have Reggie, so he's a good resource. So I'd say you question him all you want. So, I don't want to.
So, given these, some of these additional funds, such as the sale of Burroughs Avenue and the Sr2 Funds reimbursement stuff, is this where you would recommend that these funds would go?
But I think it's a good use of the funds. I don't really, it's the best use. I have to look at all the possibilities.
But like she said, operations is not a possibility.
Generally.
We can't raise teachers' salaries.
No, I wasn't thinking that.
I'm saying
Because I
about
know
that.
it's
That's
not
where he's talking about a
cost.
one-time use. If you use
Right.
it for that, next year you don't have that anymore.
No, right. I was just thinking that there could be other, there's always something. And,
We all have needs.
yes, exactly. So that's why I was kind of, from your expertise, you've been doing this a long time and you're so knowledgeable. Just wondering if this was a good use.
Well, we have to be, I think, I'm a little worried that we put ourselves in a position where we make it hard to get another referendum because we're going to need another referendum. So I don't know if, being super conservative on the 8% what makes us look better or makes us look worse.
Well, all I'm gonna say is you kind of hit on, you were saying, how do you keep up? What a lot of people do is use referendums to catch up on all their deferred maintenances. What we've done is, as Beaufort County has budgeted in a decent amount that's allowed us not to get too far behind.
We got a little far behind with 344 million, right?
Yeah, well, yes, but I'd still say compared to some other districts, we're not doing everything just by referendum. We're keeping ourselves in pretty good shape. So that's kind of your battle. How much do you spend using 8% on an annual basis? And then how much do you try to catch up just by referendums? I mean, I advocate for doing more every year so you don't get so far behind. You're trying to make up for it all by referendums. That's not really a good way to go because referendums aren't guaranteed. So,
well, in Charleston, they have an SPLOST,
Yes.
and they fund everything and pay down their debt on a 1 cent educational special purpose tax. So they don't need a referendum.
correct.
And that's also goes into it's like the best of both worlds, right?
They actually had a conversation with Charleston this week on another topic. Actually, so they spend almost 20 million every summer in 8% funds. And then just the maintenance department right now gets 25 million in for what we would do 8% funds. So they're getting right now about 45 million. They're upping that in their 2023 referendum or 1% sales tax to 65 million. Now Charleston is 45,000, close to 50,000, and we're 22,000, so they're double our size. But you're looking at, they're spending 45 million, about to go to 65 million annually, and they're double our size. We're doing 20 million.
And they carve out new school construction, and they carve out technology. They have a
Yes,
capital technology, so that doesn't include, which is a big part of our 20% or 8%.
But Charleston has used referendums
Yes,
in the past
Right, but not
to
like
do
last
large
year.
campuses, the new construction that you were speaking of. They do have the ability now with the 1 cent SPOS to do some of their capital buildings that are needed
Their
right
building sales
now.
look crazy.
But one of the things that comes into play down in Charleston with that 1 cent sales tax is, everybody, whether it's the local citizens or all the visitors that are drawn to Charleston, if you go downtown, I don't care what it is you're buying, whether it's lunch, everybody that buys that lunch from downtown is paying that tax. So
Maybe we should come up with a way to draw tourists to do their.
Okay, so what's our next step here now? Before we do that,
I'm just saying, like, we have some tourists. We have.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, we do.
So to follow up on Reggie's presentation, let's move to option 2 or option B. So what we have done what's been done in option B is, if you'll notice in the network electronics, we've taken out $1.6 million. So that's saying that $1.6 million is going to be paid for the E-rate with the E-rate funds that Reggie mentioned. So we're taking out of 8% or 20 million from 8% and using the 1.6 in E-rate funds to pay for that. We're not reducing network electronics. We're just finding another source to add $1.6 million to what's being spent on the network electronics.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So, and then the other items, you see the building's need assessment. Well, we took out on here, we kept 875, but we can all, we talked about reducing it down to the 600,000, 639. Whichever one you do, we're saying we'll pay for that with the boroughs, the funds from the boroughs avenue. So that 875 comes completely out of it.
Got it.
So by doing that, you took out the 1.6 and the 875, so you're about 2.4. Well, one of the things that we weren't able to do because we didn't have enough funds, we put back in the exterior walls at Beaufort Middle School, which was almost $2 million. So now that is being added back in as a project to be completed, as well as the $90,000 roof drain upgrade. And then you see the HVAC. Previously, we had $1,087,000. So we upped that. We still are $319 short, but we've made the total being spent at Beaufort Middle in HVAC to $1,287,000. So everything you see highlighted has been changed.
And the $90,000 roof drain upgrade, we took that off the push and put it on recommend.
Yes. So what happened here, the thought process, you notice everything pretty much is going to Beaufort Middle.
Yeah.
The thought process here, Beaufort Middle was kind of the last one in, and we took a lot of their projects away because we didn't have enough money. We're adding those in. That's that thought as we're working at Beaufort Middle. We want to knock out as much as we can and go ahead and get Beaufort Middle taken care of. So that was the philosophy here.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Madam Chairman.
Yes. Yeah.
So I, did this because, and I was trying to find all the old 8%, but we were already at 77% north of Broad. You just added, what, 3.5 million, which is going to put us into the upper 80s of the percent of money that we're spending this next summer north of the Broad. And I have to say, as a south of the Broad resident, I have some concerns about that. So that's all. Throw that out there, because the population growth. We all three, I know the high schools more than I know the elementary schools. That's just because I'm more involved. Anyway, there's 3 high schools that are at full capacity, and have some serious, not May River, but have some serious, issues. And so it concerns me a little bit to get to that much disparity between the 35% of the population north of the Broad taking up 80-some%, and vice versa. Now, maybe we talked about it and I couldn't find, I was looking at some of the other stuff. The way they do is by cluster, which is a little bit less because you've got 3 Beaufort clusters. So it looks on a bar graph, right? But if you stack the bar graph, I don't think that there's a discrepancy like that between the two. You know what I'm saying? So
I guess what your question is, in past years, have we made up that difference? So
Right.
It's not as skewed. And right now, I don't know the answer, but I could look into that. I mean, that's one of the, I know it can shift from year to year. So this year, we may be putting more money north of Broad. Next year, it may be more south of Broad. I can look at, say, the past 3 years and just kind of put that together and send it to you. Kind of see how the past 3 years.
my other concerns are per pupil spending. It's significant because it's, and I mean, I'm okay with, it doesn't have to be equal. It should be 50-50. 80 something in teens is a significant difference. So if it evens out over a greater period of time, that's one thing. But per pupil spending still, it's a significant issue, I think.
If I may, one of the things that being discussed right now sort of plays into this previous conversation related to facility condition assessments. Now, one of the things when we perform a facility condition assessment, we don't just look at the facility as a snapshot and say, what does it need today? What we try to do is look ahead for 20 years so that we can look at all the various different building systems. And by putting that information collectively into a deliverable, then you can understand some of this. Why is north of the Broad perhaps heavy in this period of time compared to maybe 3 or 4 years later? Basically, it's just trying to take that subjective nature out of it and just putting it into the facts.
That's what I'm trying to get
When the roof needs to be replaced, you need to be knowing that it's coming. Right. And by having that facility condition assessment, you know that, hey, it's scheduled in 2 years, but it'll have a big cost to it as well, which once again, when you're dealing with only $20 million, give or take, of funds, certain scopes can gobble up large components of those funds.
Okay. And I think if you do go back, a few years, the same conversation about 8% funds was kind of flipped when 8% funds were used often for
building new schools.
Exactly. So north of the Broad, do you remember that conversation was like, okay, so all of the money is going down to south of the Broad. So it would be really interesting, to see, but so I just offer that as that was not that long ago.
And just one point of clarification, I'm not trying to create a false dichotomy between, because it's all one district, but I do think there's so much growth south of Broad that everyone's kind of struggling to deal with, and to say we need to look at the per pupil spending.
Mr. Campbell?
I don't think we should get into this discussion about what is south of the Broad, north of the Broad. We look at students and equity. That's been going on for years. And you can talk to a large percentage of people in the north of the Broad will still tell you that they're still left behind as far as, well, who gets to all the money? I mean, all of us are taxpayers, and I don't think we should need to be getting into south of the Broad, north of the Broad, where the funds go. If it's needed there, then it goes there.
Right, and I think that's Mr. Campbell, I agree with you 100%, except what I'm saying is in terms of equity is where is it, needed, and for the students, as far as like the number of pupils and everything, it's all about standard. For me, I think what I want to see with these funds is standardization, where every high school has the same field and the same facilities and the same size weight room and all that, so that it does, when you look at all these schools, you can say they all have, all these students should have access to the same level of facility. I don't know how else to put that, same quality of facility. And that's what I'm concerned about, is making sure that we have standardization across the whole district.
To Mr. Corbin's point, about the third party making an assessment, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this is demonstrating a possibility of where some money can help
So
get more done.
So yes, what I've shown is actually the way, if you use what was suggested as far as using the 875 for the facilities assessment and the 1600 for E-rate, I'm actually not showing, as Reggie had mentioned, the 493 that's available, or the mold remediation 772. So there's actually 1.1, or actually almost 1.2 million that could be added if you wanted to go there. That's a whole conversation with finance and operations at that joint meeting.
Right.
And so with that, now's the time to, what would you like to see moved around? So I guess, do you like this format? What projects on here do you want to add back, take off? And would you want to consider putting almost 1.2 million additional on top of it? Now, the board policy though, right now for unused funds is to go against the amount, the 20 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that, the way it is right now in the board policy is to take that 493 and actually reduce the amount you borrow.
Okay.
Keep the 20 million, reduce the amount you borrow, although your financial plan has been set up to borrow 20 million. So you're going to reduce the amount to borrow, which is not what you planned to borrow. So in other words, if you reduce the 20 million you plan to borrow by almost 500,000, you're only going to borrow 19.5.
Right?
Your financial plan was set up to borrow 20 million. I see you look confused.
Yeah, I'm just trying.
Reggie, help me.
No, I'll get it. Just take
Well, I think we're just hit on that. That determines your millage rate too. So,
Yeah, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, but that's kind of that whole conversation we need to have, I think, with that joint group. But-
Yeah.
So with that being said,
So,
tell me your interest.
Mr. Smith or Ms. Boatright, are there any of these items on here that you might think should go above the line, below the line, anything that you have a little bit of heartburn about?
Well, I mean, the water tank is a heartburn.
You want to bring it above the line.
Yeah,
Yes, I do too.
if something happens, I mean, it's never.
And Nick, are you there and are you able to run the spreadsheet live?
Yeah, I'm here.
And so Robin, can you give Nick the ability to share his screen?
Yep.
Because I think he can then move, I think he can.
Should we use option B, Robert, to
Well, yeah, let me ask
facilitate this?
Yeah.
I think that would be our recommendation.
So Nick can share, you can share screen.
Yeah, I think that some of the changes, the recommendations you're making with using some of the funds are very good recommendations. So I would suggest that we use option B.
Okay.
Can you repeat that? Which option?
Yes,
Full of option B.
All right. Is that the one I've got open here? It is.
Yeah. And then I think what we're hearing is line 72, that water tank and fencing down at JJ Davis. Now, looking to move that one up
Okay.
above the black line.
I'm going to be noting it in orange for the time being, just so we can see the changes.
Also, too, I'd like a little conversation on the request at Whale Branch Early College High School for the, let's see, line 140.
Okay. Counseling suite.
Right, you brought us some, we have some pictures, and can someone speak to this, please?
So Nick, you want me to take it?
Why don't you take it, Robert?
No, that's actually our new set. So those pictures that you see, you have two pictures there. One is actually the counseling suite at May River High School. That's the one in the bottom right.
Okay.
And, yeah, and what you see in the top right is Well Branch. And the top left is the actual layout now currently of Well Branch.
What's this sort of interrogation room thing?
So that's real quick. Looking at that screen, everybody, in the top left where you see A114,
Uh-huh.
and the end door is actually off of A hall. If you see that, that's this. That's the room that you see in the bottom left.
So it's actually, it actually almost has no use right now. So what is hatched in that's in that top left? That is the area that Ms. Dixon would like to create a counseling suite out of, which would include, like what you see at the bottom is a waiting area with a reception desk type situation with offices behind it. That's what she would like to create there. So what you see, like you see office A12, that's the assistant principal's office. It's into the main hallway, and A13, it's into that main atrium area, if you're familiar with Wellbrae. So 112 and 113 have no association with the counseling suite right now.
Right.
So
And those are APs, you said?
I know 112 is. I think 113 may be another support service office.
Okay.
A114, as Nick just mentioned, is that area that really has no use right now. It's just a big room. So, and then B17 is kind of your lobby area, but you see how it's just a weird shaped long hall with this small lobby area, and then the two offices off that.
That's
So-
actually the picture in the top right.
Okay.
So what she's looking at is, kind of take this down so you could create a lobby area here in the front and have some office and spaces back here. It is not well laid out.
It's not efficient.
Yeah, it's just, I can't disagree in any way. It's not a good layout.
But we've got the area that's hatched here,
Yes.
that by funding this, we can go in, we can program that space, recarve it so that it's efficient and it has the program spaces that are needed for this counseling suite. And that's what this is trying to convey.
So will this create like another office or anything, or are you just gonna basically take down this wall and make A14, 114, and B117 one big space?
So, yeah, I mean, what it would create is I know the general concept is somewhere here in the front would be more of a lobby area. So you
This is
come
that Well
in.
Branch,
Yes, sir.
early college, high school.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So you would create more of a lobby here, and then, so your support in your offices would be in kind of this back area.
Yeah.
It would give you a space where, like you're seeing at May River, where kids could wait. They also have computers and resources and other things in that.
Of course, there's 1,700 students, it's never gets
Right.
more crowded.
Right.
And then there are offices in the back. that might-
Right, for
Yeah.
Then this
the
would be-
privacy that allows you to access it.
I would,
I have a
yeah,
question.
May River space is probably 3 or 4 times that.
Yes, Mr. Smith?
Why would we, at this point, what's the point of rearranging it and touching this building right now at that?
That is a request of the current principal in a way that to make the space more usable and efficient.
And it's been requested for years.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but it's only been built for years. I mean, it could have been requested for a ton of years.
So, Mr. Smith, the reason we're discussing this is that I have a little bit of concern about this particular line item at $300,000 to redo the counseling space of our smallest high school,
Second,
and our second newest, when there might be some other needs.
And I agree. That was where I was driving at. I apologize for talking over you. I mean, but that's where I was driving at. So you spot. We're in agreement on that.
So if we were to look at line items 137, 138, 140, 141, 140.
You're going too fast.
I'm sorry.
All the way over.
All the Whale Branch Early College High School, just, in my head here, 320, 450. I mean, we're talking.
On the screen, William, he's using his thing on the screen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
These
Christopher.
the three items you're talking about, 137, 138, and 140, they total 397, 104.
Right. So, and then even if you bring over the pushed item for the water fountains, is that to change them to water bottle filling stations?
Yes.
That's what it's for, yes.
Right, to instead of replace it in your so you can fill the water bottles,
Right,
right?
we put those in 11 years ago. We put in old fashioned.
Correct.
11 years ago, those weren't.
Yeah.
They weren't the trend.
Yeah. No,
So, and
So
I
you guys
think
are not on trend.
So the difference, right now, any water fountain that needs to be replaced, we replace with one of those. This is just to go ahead and replace ones that don't require being
Gotcha.
with the more modern version. Now, what I will say is teachers and students absolutely love those. I remember Miss Carol Ingram at Beaufort Middle. She looked at me and said, "Brother, I'm so happy you gave us those water bottle fillers." And I just thought, okay. She goes, "Brother, you don't understand how important that is to us." I mean,
well,
it's
that's why I'm saying,
Yes.
I would like to see that
moved over.
moved over. I mean, it is a quality of life.
It's a
As-
pandemic. Who is going to stick their mouth down on a nasty 80s water fountain?
Right, so I would very much like to see that pushed back into the recommended.
Someone else wanted it and we pushed it out.
There have been, yes. We
Right, so-
are, as far as maintenance goes, we replaced one in every school last year. We tried to replace one in every, we probably did about 15 this year. So as we can, we're doing that with maintenance, but not every water fountain in the buildings.
So if I'm hearing correctly, under the exercise where Nick can demonstrate as we move and keep a running tally, you're asking move the 27,720 into the recommended.
Correct.
And I believe the request for the 318,000 counselor suite, you would like to see what that would look like if it went below the black line?
Yes.
All three of those.
Well, no, I'm not saying to, I mean, you said
Well,
last
the
meeting.
upgrade of the principal conference room was a pull-out already.
Right, right. But you mentioned that they are one of our two south-facing
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I've been in classrooms where you can't do anything because of the glare or, the heat.
Yes.
So I'm not saying take everything away from Whalebridge or Lake Carlos High School. I would have a hard time supporting redoing that counseling suite for $300,000 when they're, I mean, if it was our
When
oldest
we
high
got-
school.
Yeah.
And like,
All sorts of other
yeah.
problems.
So, yes, Mr. Corbin, so,
Are we moving it below the black line or below the red line?
I heard black line, but
I'm thinking more. I mean,
do you think she'd rather that versus the parking? I mean, Ms.
Yes,
Dixon,
if I had, whether she was gonna do one or the other, she would like the counseling.
the counseling versus the parking.
I would
Okay.
definitely say that, yes.
Well, then I would move that below the black and move the parking down below the red.
because technically that parking
I
was
would-
already pulled out.
Yeah,
It was pulled out already.
It
So
was
technically,
already.
if it was already
It
off the
was,
list.
that's
yeah.
right. Thank you, it's way over here.
Mrs. Fidrich,
Yes, sir?
we can put those things below the red.
Well, that's what we're discussing. What are your thoughts?
I'm agreeing with below the red.
And you're saying the counseling suite below the red, and what's
Yes,
the other
ma'am.
item you're saying below the red?
What's the other, the counseling suite, and what's the other one?
parking.
No, right now, there's a custodial office and the window shades, sunshades at the windows.
Can you make your screen a little bigger for me, please?
Sure. See what I can do for you. So what we'd be looking at is these two items right here.
Right.
These are both at Well Branch. Is this good?
Right. Yes, sir.
So I believe the reason there was a custodial office space recommendation is because the custodial office is actually sharing the storage space. It's not separated.
Okay.
And
That's
typically,
where
typically our custodians have a separate office space?
Yes, they do have office
They
break
have-
space area.
Okay, so to me, that'd be an equity thing, Mr. Smith, if other schools have a separate custodial space, office space, I think that would be appropriate.
Right. How about the upgrade on the conference room?
That's already been moved.
Okay. I
So
see
that's
it.
right here over in pullouts.
Right.
Okay.
And the reason why Nick is putting them over there to the right is so that we can keep them consistent and have the same type of list for our conversations today. But once they go over to the far right and we get a consensus that, yeah, this is the list to bring forward, these ones that would be on the right currently for pullouts, they would all drop below that red line that you see in there. Because right now that red line is demonstrating where it was when we began our conversation. And we've already had conversations, if you recall, for pulling out those ones that are on the right. It's just like he's doing with these current what ifs that we're examining. He's putting them over to the right so that once we say, yes, this is the version that we're going to go forward with, then we just clean up this file. And then you don't have any of the pullouts or removes above the black anymore. It's just what's required and recommended. Then we get into the midsection, and then everything below the red would be, you know, a push or a remove for those that we've discussed earlier that are in the gray.
Okay.
Possibly could we, could we possibly think on this and come back to this?
We need to keep moving forward a bit so we can come back to it prior to leaving today. Would that be enough time?
Actually, I want to kind of look and digest this a little bit more, and I was hoping that we would have another meeting on this.
Well, the next meeting will be next Thursday. That'll be a joint operations finance meeting.
Right.
So really, we were hoping to have somewhat of a document to present to the finance committee, the joint finance operations meeting.
And so, Mr. Smith, we looked at this last week. I know you were not able to join us last week.
Due to technology difficulty, yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so we looked at this last week, and so the plan for today was to come up with a much tighter list. So what I think I'm hearing you say is that you, and I agree, that the counseling suite should go at a minimum below the black line. You would like to see it further down, correct?
Yes, to be honest with you, it can go below the red line, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I agree with you, Mr. Smith, because I think before we start getting into remodeling 11-year-old schools, we need to look at replacing roofs. I'm with you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move it?
Yes, I think we are.
I have a bold request. Bold. So brace yourself. This is what you do when you've been on the board for 4 months. You ask them to move the $1.5 million upgrade to restrooms. Because let me tell you something, there's raw sewage on the floor at Helena High when it rains. I mean, it is the bathrooms there, that none of the soap dispensers work. We're in a pandemic. We need water pressure and we need clean and sanitary restrooms. So you guys have that on there at the district level. 1.5, I don't know if we need the full 1.5, but I think we need to, as we get ready to reopen full face-to-face, we need to have water fountains, right, and bathrooms. That to me, because when this pandemic happened, I had parents who were like, it's crazy. We were still in school. Everyone's still in school. Like, it's crazy. There's this pandemic and we don't have any soap. So I think, and I've got pictures of broken toilets and sewage on the floor at Hilton Head High. I'm sure some of the older schools are in the same boat. And I just think that's something we should talk about as we get ready to do a full reopen.
And I agree with that, Mrs. Boatwright, because that's my mind thinking right now, because I know there's a couple of schools that have bathrooms that I know one particularly that are in several places in that building that are not functional. And before we go back to full face-to-face, those things need to be dealt with. And I'm really curious to check those things out, or call and see, because one principal even reached out to me one time and was talking about that. And that's another reason why I'm not really ready to put my final signature on this list to move forward, because I want to make sure that those are things that have been looked at and vetted before we just move forward with this.
Do you want to tell us why you pushed it?
If that makes sense.
Well, I mean, one of the things is the dollar amount. I am all for that with one caveat I have to say to your statement, just one thing to realize, Hilton Head High School in particular, we probably would not do major restroom renovations at Hilton Head High
So I
School.
don't want major restroom, I just want all the toilets to work and all the sinks to
Right.
work.
No,
and
that's-
the soap dispensers and the one bathroom that gets raw sewage on the floor, whatever we gotta do. I got pictures. When
Let me
it
know where that
rains.
is. I don't know where that is.
Yeah, they sent me pictures. When it rains and there's a lot of student activity, like a lot of people are flushing toilets, it backs up and it's a black sewage on the floor and maintenance
Okay.
comes and cleans it up. But I was like, how can you have sewage on the floor in the middle of a pandemic? So and the bathrooms still look okay, like I'm not saying let's put in fancy, but I think we need to make sure that every bathroom in all 32 schools is functional with water, sinks, soaps, and toilets, and no sewage on the floor.
So just right, this money is looking at complete renovation, like
So maybe
gutting
it's
out that
less.
fixtures to make it new almost.
So maybe I don't need such a bold 1.5
No,
million.
I'm all for that. I just want you to recognize what this money was intended for compared to your specific example is more about general maintenance than, say, complete renovation of the restaurant.
That's where I was going to suggest is that listening to your comments, those are the items that fall typically under routine maintenance. What these funds would accomplish would be to put up new fixtures,
I think we need new
to
pictures.
put in new partitions, floor finishes, wall finishes, that refresh, if you will, so that when you go into the group restrooms, that they're meeting the district standards that you want everywhere. But the thing to keep in mind also is that when these funds get approved, we can't snap our fingers and have it all done where I
Oh, right,
heard
that's next
Mr. Smith say, hey, before we go back into school for this coming school year, that's gonna be a difficult challenge time-wise. But whatever funds we do get put into a funded line, that's what those would be intended to accomplish.
And I know that this is summer work, but I do think bathrooms are probably things that we could do, like you could shut down one bathroom at a time and get them, because I do think this is a concern that parents have about their kids in school is not having, I went into Hilton Head, I'm not promoting just Hilton Head.
Well, the only reason why I'm not saying Hilton Head is just because it's planned on being a major renovation.
Right, but I think
I
that-
don't want to make that kind of investment in a school that's gonna get.
So like
already
those
major.
old sinks where the water just trickles out and there's not a single soap dispenser in a single bathroom I went into, and those kinds of things we need to see.
Those can be fixed as regular maintenance items.
Maybe.
It's the renovation that we're
So,
talking about with those.
Ms. Boatright, you send me those locations, there's no maybe, those will be fixed as regular maintenance items.
There you
Well, because
go.
I do think like we might need new fixtures, I mean, I don't know if that's maintenance or if that's
Well,
renovation.
new fixtures not typical, unless it's broken, would not be a maintenance item. Then you're getting towards renovation.
And all, oh.
Mr.
And also,
Smith?
and also, I mean, well, yeah, I did say, I did say, yes, I expect for those things to be fixed. And I do understand that this is some work and it takes time. I mean, that the students are going back and it will be fixed before. I do understand that actually this is the actual summer work for the following summer. I do understand that, but I believe in taking a massive immediate action as soon as possible to get the things that need to be on the list that are dang near emergencies first versus things that we just are kind of people are saying that they want done. I think that sometimes we get things that people want done before things that need is basically on the balance wheel. To make a long story short, I prefer to serve need versus want. I understand that you want a Corvette, but I'm gonna start you off with this bike, and once you get on this bike, at some point in time, I get you into a car. If that makes sense.
So on line 20, upgrade restrooms at multiple locations. How many locations? And 1.5 goes to how many?
Right.
And that spreadsheet behind you.
And is this something that we could do
Nick may have that still.
a third of that?
Right, I mean, I agree with you, Tricia, that's.
Nick, do you have the locations that
Supported that figure?
supports the 1.5 million figure?
It's roughly 8 locations, ranging from 20 to 150,000 per location.
What are the 8 locations that are listed?
Hilton Head Island High School, it was actually for ADA configuration. Mossy Oaks Elementary, another ADA configuration. Port Royal is actually new fixtures. It's a smaller amount. It's about $20,000 for some new fixtures for replacement.
They gave it to
Okay, that's 3.
the administration.
St. Helena Elementary, it's fixtures, but it's actually, I believe, that all main restrooms needed new fixtures. JJ, and that was 200,000 was our estimate. JJ Davis, Early Childhood Center, that is actually for just 2 new pre-K bathrooms. There's 2 pre-Ks that actually don't have restrooms in their current configuration, and that's 150,000. Whale Branch Elementary, that was a minor renovation for floor-mounted fixtures, 185,000. And then 2 more, Lady Island Middle School and Hilton Head Island School of Creative Arts. Both are just renovations of their existing restrooms. I believe these 2 both were ADA configurations to make them compliant.
Okay. So you're going to, no, you haven't brought this up, but you have some thoughts on, I mean, preschools without a bathroom in the classroom, that's a difficult thing.
Well, I think what it is that the school wants to modify an existing space to serve the needs of that growing pre-K.
Yeah, they want to change classrooms that weren't pre-K classrooms into pre-K.
And that's why it doesn't have it. And before that can be changed, you've got to meet the code requirement for that individual restroom. So just add that clarity there.
Right, so they're reconfigured classrooms, and for the new use, you've got to have.
Can we ask for look, I'm stepping out on a limb here, so just put me back in my place because I'm still using the new thing.
I'm not saying that.
I'm just saying, I don't want to overstep my bounds. Is there a way, perhaps, that we could have some sort of a pre-fall assessment of the restrooms and identify priority situations so that the message to the public would be able to achieve 2 goals? 1, clearing up some of these problems. 2, we can have a message to the population that before your kids come back fully face to face, we're going to have the bathrooms assessed. We're going to have everything. You're going to have one thing that they mentioned at Hilton Head High, and I'm just saying Hilton Head High because I happen to go there, was the old-fashioned pump where you push on the soap, and teenagers and probably even middle school is not a really good combo. Could we say we're going to put, and I guarantee there's ESSER funds for this, that we could use ESSER funds to upgrade our bathrooms in some way. So can we commission, I don't know what the word would be, like an assessment of the bathrooms and identify the priorities for reopening? Well, not reopening, but for fall 2021, when everyone's going to be back in the classroom.
You're saying right now, can we have this work done by fall of this year?
An assessment and a prioritization so that if there are bathrooms that don't have soap, for example, or don't have working sinks, or don't have adequate number of toilets, that we can take care of those as quickly as possible.
So any of those, the answer is yes. Right now, if you know of any of those, we'll get those taken care of now. So that's not that is a maintenance issue. That'll get taken care of.
So that's different than what we're looking at here.
The only change would be if you're asking for a different soap soap dispenser. Thank you. Then we have now, those are supplied by our custodial contractor. So if we want something specific, different than they're supplying, there may be a cost to that we'd have to talk about. But any problems like that you're talking about, those can get taken care of, assessed, and fixed before fall. So that, I'm not aware of that many out there, but any of those you know of, let me know, and those will get taken care of. That's not what this is that we're talking about.
Okay. It's a great conversation to have, but I think we need to focus on this. Mr. Smith?
Any bathroom problems like that, let me know.
My questions are kind of along the lines of Ms. Boatwright, but let me formulate this. What's the definition of a maintenance issue?
Yeah, I can.
So I'm not sure. So one of the general rules of thumb, so maintenance is taking care of existing equipment and keeping it functioning or replacing as it goes. A kind of general rule of thumb, if it's over, say, $5,000 to $10,000 of replacement, then you may start to look at a capital item. Now, that being said, there are air conditioning units and things like that. The repairs can cost more than $5,000 or $10,000. But I would just use that as a general good rule of thumb.
That's good. I like it.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Boatright.
No, I'm talking over Ms. Fidrich.
That's okay. I just think these are excellent operation committee type of conversations, but it sounds to me like that is different than what we're looking at now for the 8% funds, except if Ms. Boatright, what I'm hearing you say, when Nick gave us these 8 listings of locations that have been prioritized for this, if you would like Mr. Odding, Mr. Corrigan to come back and say, prioritize this list.
Yeah.
So what happens, so if you do approve this list, we send, now prioritize, yes, but as far as assessment goes, the first thing we do, we'll do that in the fall, send architects out to assess the situation and decide what needs to be done as far as the design work. And that would start as early as this fall. But yeah, you can prioritize that. As of right now, I think we've got almost $400,000 that could come in here on top of the decisions that you have with, say, the 772 or even the 483. Now, the 483, that's a change in board policy.
Right, I'm not sure that.
So that's a major step.
So you're suggesting that you would like to see some prioritization of these 8 locations to see how far some of that money would go to work with the restroom.
Now, recognize another option for us is to put it, well, you could put, this is a little different, you could put, say, the 400,000 we have available above the black line and the 1 million left below the black line.
Yep.
So that's saying that you have dedicated $400,000 worth of funds to go to restrooms, and as money becomes available, you could have up to $1 million more coming from contingencies of the savings of the other projects could go as that money becomes available. That's kind of what below the black line is for, that, you know, as money's available, that's the next project you put it to.
And I like the idea that we can do the same procedure where basically we give the district the money to allocate to the schools, and then you just kind of inform us, you know, how you.
These are the highest priorities.
Yeah, and we can prioritize too for how to use that 400. What's that 400,000 going to go for, and what are priorities for the next million that are below the black line? That would be my suggestion.
I love this plan. I love everything about it.
I mean, at that point, you use, unless there's other items that people want to move.
Yeah, I was pleased to see that there were some suggestions to move some.
To me, I think roofing, HVAC, something like an exterior wall repair, safety and security. Like once we get all that done, we can look at like comfort and convenience. Like once we get all our bike spot, we can start talking about a Corvette.
Right. The last thing that I would like to ask about is, can we not allocate a portion of money to go to furniture replacement above the 200,000? I know I spoke to a principal a year ago, and that was her top priority is furniture. We need to spend more than that. So
now we've kind of, yeah, I think that's great.
Go ahead, please.
No, we've just kind of created this, putting part of it above the line and part of it below the line. So,
and I think that Nick could probably show us in his spreadsheet, or tell us, hey, with the changes we've made so far, this is how much we're below the $20 million target.
I'd like to see that.
So that we could say, hey, well, that now gives us 300 or 400,000 that could be put above the line for furniture and fixtures and equipment.
Okay.
Leaving the rest down below, perhaps.
remember, you still the 772 here, still there.
Yeah.
That's 700,000.
I would like, once we get the restrooms up to snuff, I would love to spend every available dime on furniture, and you know, that doesn't need to go to roofing and HVAC.
So much
That's
stuff.
key. And we're behind on that.
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you.
I disagree. Nothing.
Okay.
I disagree with the furniture. I did know what you just said. Basically, is what I was saying, that yeah, the furniture is not one of the main things right now. One of the main things is other things. The underlining the kind of emergencies.
Such
Need
as,
versus want.
okay, so would you be a bit more specific? What would you like to see? Other than some additional funds expended toward furniture? I could just tell Mrs. Smith, I know I've been out of the classroom for 3 years, but when you don't have enough desks, when your desks are such that you have the kids lean back in the plastic and they're all broken and they're falling down, and you've got tables where you
Not much furniture. Don't get me wrong. Now that's furniture. Now that's a need versus want. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about, we're talking about desks and chairs and that sort of thing.
That's what I'm referring to, Mr. Smith, is that student furniture, the classroom furniture, the multi-purpose room furniture.
Mr. Smith, I think you and I agree on a couple of things. One, we want to see the money go to students, right?
Right,
And
right.
needs. And
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I think what we want to prioritize is student furniture, right? And then
Right.
number two, what they pointed out to us is we are so far off what we need to do just to have the kids have the desks they need, because we only allocate like $20,000 and we have the needs of the furniture. So I think as long as, I think we can include that, we should even like say the district level furniture for students, you know, so that people understand this is a student need, not a nicety.
And I will say that has been what we've spent replacement money on, is in the classroom. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of office furniture that's falling apart too, but we always
But that's
prioritize
first, yeah.
student need first.
Right. Okay. So I don't know if Nick is still there, but where are we with the bottom line?
Oh, I'm here.
Hi, Nick.
I just wasn't sure what was the next step.
I don't blame you. I understand that. So could you just pull up this spreadsheet again and show us where we are with our bottom line?
Yes, here we go. Sorry, I had the screen paused.
That's okay.
So with the removal of the counseling sweep, and I think we brought the water tank up. We're now at 19.7.
You moved the drinking fountains at Will Branch Early College High School over to recommended as well?
I did. The effect, obviously, on the bottom line wasn't as big as the counseling sweep.
Yeah. So that figure now is totaling what, Nick?
19.7 for everything that we have right now. Now recognize this is from our previous version that still has the column for the pullouts for reconcile. So we still have these items over here.
Well, those aren't included in that 19.7, correct?
That is correct. That's why we are below the 20 million.
267.
But if they stay over to the right, once we settle on what's going to be above the black line and between the black and the red, those that are pulled out just drop down below the red line.
I can make a suggestion.
Please do.
I would suggest adding your, I think we can do this, can't we? Reggie, add this 772 from the mold remediation funds, which would bring you to at 270, that'd be 9, that'd be 114. And then you have your furniture and restrooms. You all decide how much you want to go to restrooms and how much you want to go to furniture.
Right. So
You moved over, correct? Yeah.
are you saying that with these monies that you were talking about, the 772, that basically that would increase the bottom line from 20 million by that additional fund?
Correct.
So in addition to the 772, what was the other figure that you had mentioned?
267 is what
We're under already.
we're under.
Yeah, so we're going to go back up to 20, but we can go to really 20,770,000 to 874.
If you go to 20,772,000, you're only borrowing $20 million.
Perfect. Right, and what we could do is we could do a little blend of how much money would we put towards bathrooms?
Right.
And a blend for how much would we put towards furniture and keep the remaining piece down. We could bring that forward. We don't necessarily have to have the specifics yet ironed out. We could still do the assessments, figure out where the highest needs are, but by having a set amount of funds earmarked and approved to do those restroom renovations, for example, then we can at least do that next step. And then when we have it identified, we know exactly, okay, we're going to this location and that location, and this is what we're going to accomplish.
And I think this gets to operation versus policy. So the policy from my point of view would be functioning restrooms, furniture, you know, and then improving restrooms as needed, and then improve, you know what I mean? That it's a prioritization policy piece that we should work out. And then however you don't want to do it.
Yeah, because I really think, like Robert's tried to share, the maintenance side of it, I wouldn't be concerned about that. That's going to get fixed. Now it comes down to, okay, what do we want to refresh? What needs to be replaced because it's no longer serving the needs of our occupants? So that's the overhaul of some of the group restrooms. It's the overhaul of some of the student furniture. How much can we get accomplished? Well, I think we can put a figure to each of those buckets and bring a recommendation back.
That's what I was hoping, is that you guys could, you know, you're hearing the conversation, you know which way it's going, and then rely on you guys.
Make it happen.
We can make it happen. I got it.
Okay.
Well, can you tell me, because you got two big numbers here. You have a furniture need that's well above that. You've got you want to split it in half? Between restrooms and furniture, 50-50, 70-30. I mean,
You know what? I personally would like to rely on your expertise. I mean, we have we're non-compliant, ADA compliant in some bathrooms where,
so in other words, we
mean,
really need to look at, I'm going to say we're going to look at restrooms first.
Yeah.
See which one of the restrooms are the top priority, really knock those out, and then whatever's left kind of would go towards furniture, and then both would go below the black and red for additional funds to be used for both.
I think that's
items.
Yeah, that would be acceptable. And that way we know if we're going to address the change in the program space so that they can have pre-K in the classroom, those would be high priority restrooms.
Yeah.
Right. And then what I would say is, like, what I would like to see on the board, just as a general rule, is rather than, you know, I don't want you guys to come and be like, is it okay if we do this? Because I don't know. But then just let us know what you're doing, like a feedback, and then we can say, well, wait, you know what I mean? Like, we can say something that doesn't, like, kind of with this whole bonus thing. You know, if there's a feedback loop where if something gets away from what we perceive to be the policy of the board, because it's hard to articulate, then we can just keep us informed of what, you know, decisions you're making.
Yeah.
right, like this was very helpful, just knowing the reasons why these 8 locations were enumerated, so. Okay,
Does that sound reasonable, Mr. Smith? You're muted.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
oh,
Good.
right,
Unanimity.
All right, I think we got it. So we're going to come back to the meeting on Thursday with a new list. It will be $20,772,000. It'll be with the changes we are discussed, plus the prioritization of restrooms and furniture
Yes.
added as well.
yes,
Got it.
all right,
I'm feeling good about this.
okay.
Well, good.
Mr. Smith, any other questions regarding this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, great. Let's see, our next meeting is Thursday at 5. Wasn't it 5 o'clock, I
I have to
believe?
say, I don't remember the
I
time.
think it is. It's a joint one with finance.
Don't we have the one before that with, not 8%, but?
Yes, I mean,
The
the next one
construction.
about this, the next one about this. We do have our regular, operations committee.
The regular operations committee is on Wednesday, the 12th at 4:30. And then you have a joint finance operations committee meeting on the 13th at 5 o'clock.
Right, and
So you're saying we're not going to discuss this at the next operation?
Wednesday's gonna be the J Braggs and the, right?
Okay.
well, I was hoping that you get in touch with and see if Jay Bragg would do the Ladies Island Middle School
Ken?
on Wednesday, and then the compensation study. So it's not 8%,
Did you want,
unless you need it to be.
Well, what we can do is just bring the revised list and just show
Okay,
that that's what we'll present to the finance committee.
okay,
We'll kind of just
Let's do
bring,
that.
this is what we're gonna do at the finance committee, as long as everybody, we'll just real quickly So if anybody's got any major objections, we
Right,
can address those.
all right, so
For
that's.
for the Wednesday meeting though, I apologize for interrupting. The construction update that we typically bring, you would like to receive that on Wednesday as well?
Yes.
Is it time for that already?
Yes, it is.
I don't think you're.
We're a little off because
We
of
are a
spring
little off.
break and
Okay.
it punches us a little bit, but
Yes.
because this is an item that the board is interested in receiving on a
Absolutely.
regular basis, we've already
We may
begun
have to,
the process,
Right, right.
so we'll
So-
stick with that.
Absolutely, Mr. Corbin, thank you for that, keeping me online with that. So, Mr. Smith?
I would say we may have to have an additional meeting then.
We have to.
Well,
What time's the Wednesday meeting start to?
4:30.
4:30.
4:30. And then then you have a meeting again on Thursday at 5 o'clock.
At 5, and that's the joint one with operation and finance.
Finance, correct.
Okay. I hear what you're saying, Mr. Smith, but I don't anticipate that we're not gonna be going through when Mr. Otting brings us the new list, we're not gonna be going through it to this depth. The compensation study, we already had a discussion about it. The construction update can be the salient points.
Yep.
And I'm not even sure that Ms. Bragg is going to be able to join us. That would, if she can't do it we can do it at a different time.
She did commit to that, didn't she?
We didn't have a date though. We did not have a date and time, but she did say yes, she would come back. Okay,
Thanks for all that
all right.
stuff. Because-
Thank God.
Yeah,
I make a motion with adjourn.
Yes, second.
okay. All in agreement? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you.